William Stroudley's Terriers are one of the most beloved classes of steam locomotive in the UK, especially on this channel. Now celebrating their 150th birthdays, having survived against all odds, it's worth raising a glass to the 10 remaining examples. In the 1970s, you could literally do this down at the local tap, because one of these Victorian relics stood plinth'd outside as a giant pub sign. This is the complete history of Terrier W8 Freshwater. Finished by New Year's Eve 1876 as part of the 4th batch, Brighton Terrier number 46 was named Newington after the district in South London. Like its 49 classmates, it was set to work dealing with the endless swarms of commuters travelling to and from the capital. It happily barked out of its base in Battersea until bigger engines took over. In April 1902, it was renumbered 646, in a time when the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway found that they had too many of these old engines at their disposal. Personally, I don't think you could ever have enough of these engines. They're good. Fortunately, the next year a new railway came to save Newington. The London and South Western Railway had been tasked with sourcing lightweight but powerful engines to climb the steep hills of the Lyme Regis branch, but they didn't have anything spare themselves. In a humble move, they turned to their arch rivals and trialled 2 Terriers. The free-steaming little engines were more than up for the task, so Newington and Clapham both joined the other side and were repainted in a very blinding green. Newington became number 734 and had the dome and safety valves swapped out for Drummond-style lock-up valves. Until the Lyme Regis branch opened in August 1903, Newington was kept busy doing odds jobs in Paul Quay, Guildford and Exmouth. For a decade it settled into its new home, until another railway came calling. On the 25th of June 1913, the already second-hand engine was hired to the Freshwater, Yarmouth and Newport Railway. It crossed over to the Isle of Wight along with 7 coaches on a barge, and became so popular there that it was fully bought the following year. There in 1917 it became number 2, and got a slightly different garish green coat. This was swapped out for olive and the prefix W2 when the Southern Railway took over in 1923, who fitted a larger bunker in 1924 so that the Island Terriers could hold more coal. Having been without one since its Brighton days, it was gifted the name Freshwater in 1928. Simply to confuse you all, in 1932 it was rebuilt to A1X form and renumbered to W8. By the end of World War II, Freshwater had lost its green coat for an all-black livery. This stayed with it into British Railways days, being numbered 32646. Freshwater became one of the last 2 Terriers on the island when it was shipped back to the mainland on the 4th of May 1949. It joined the rest of the last remaining Terriers working the Hayling Island branch, until that closed in November 1963. Unlike most of the others which landed their way into preservation, Freshwater had some surprising ways of staying clear of retirement. The Saddler Railcar Company had bought part of the old Meon Valley line in Hampshire to use as a test ground for an experimental rail bus. It was essentially an earlier version of everyone's favourite, the pacer. The bigger picture was to reopen the Cows to Ride line, so Freshwater was brought over to help move it around and do other odd jobs. However, the company eventually burnt down to nothing when an arson attack, which may or may not have been sabotage from a rival bus company, destroyed the prototype rail bus. Hailing Island at this point was missing their iconic hailing billies, so Freshwater was sold again to the Brickwoods Brewery, later Whitbreads, who decided to use the loco as a giant pub sign. Marketing genius. On the 13th of May 1966, it ran a last hurrah at Droxford Station, before being quickly loaded onto a lorry and plinth'd outside the Hailing Billy pub. I say quickly, because even after it had arrived, it still had water in the boiler and clinker in the firebox from its last journey. In this condition, it sat outside for many years, being repainted back into Stroudley Improved Engine Green, sort of, and regaining its original name. Even so, you'd think that by sitting out by the sea for this long would cause the engine to rust away to nothing, whilst the other hailing terriers had gone on to steam again at their new homes. The pub generously donated their giant billboard to the Isle of Wight Steam Railway, who sailed it back across the Solent on the 25th of June 1979. Exactly 66 years since it had first arrived there. To everyone's surprise, they found that the boiled, fresh water had helped to keep the boiler and firebox in good condition, and it was back in steam only 2 years later. Freshwater returned to running as it had and where it had for many years, even being repainted into the FYNR pea green again, and taking part in the line's extension opening ceremony to Smallbrook Junction. Unlike other railways where terriers aren't used as heavily as larger engines, the Isle of Wight pair are used far more regularly, as the biggest engines there are IVT2MT tanks. This meant that by 1998, the boiler on Freshwater was in need of major repairs. At this point, it wasn't heard of to build brand new boilers for preserved locos like this, to see them through into the 21st century. But nevertheless, this is what happened. Being such popular vintage engines, collaborations were made between several railways to not only build 2 new Terrier boilers, but also wheel castings, cylinder blocks and chimneys to their original specifications. With its brand new boiler, Freshwater has again earned its keep on the island, being able, if needed, to run on less than a ton of coal a day, and still being capable of pulling the line's pre-grouping coaches. For an engine that was sold onto new homes 5 times, and yet still acts as a key player in the fleet, I think Freshwater has deserved the care and attention bestowed upon it at Haven Street. At the time of editing, that is where the loco is nearing the end of its overhaul, ready to once again pull authentic Southern Railway era trains across the island. Do visit the Isle of Wight Steam Railway to see the engine for yourself, and consider joining as a patron of this channel to support future guide rails by following the link in the description. Thanks! Alex Goodman, GBH Train, D0280 Falcon, Sean Tempest, Random Thomas Fan, Dark White 73, Andrew Dyack, Reese Lee Walter, Ryan RTS, Ewan Pentland, Jude 72, and Steam Power 4472.